between Cleveland, Pittsburgh, Erie, and Columbus. Not farther away from Columbus, more toward the state line, and it was Amish country. And remember that the Amish had some persecution where one of their farmers, one of their ranchers, was producing, what do you call it, a certain very clean, very pure brand of beef, and blessed and slaughtered very gently and humanely. And this rancher was fined $500,000 for not conforming to the U.S. Department of Agriculture guideline. Okay, so there's an element of the Amish, but something came to my attention the last couple of days. Vanguard is the landlord for right-of-way rail that includes a very large fiber internet trunk line connecting Chicago, Washington, and New York. Now, I wonder, is that going to be maybe commandeered and cut off? Okay. We're seeing sabotage. I've got some napkin math. Pardon me, I'm a very fidgety guy. I got some napkin math for you. You might like. I did this yesterday. Train derailments of a nasty type are a 1 in a decade event. So that's 120 months. We've had 5 or 6 in the last month. And there's another explosion today in Ohio, molten whatever spewing into the air. Okay, let's just call it 6. Okay, so if it all happened in 1 month, and typically it's 1 in every 120 months, then you've got 1 in 120 to the 6th power, which turns out to be 1 in 3 trillion. Now, if it's only 5, okay, it'll be less. It'd be like, scratch 100 off that, and it'd be like 1 in 30 billion. Okay, we're dealing with numbers that do not wash on any kind of a stated hypothesis that this is a random, typical, ordinary event. We got train derailments. Oh gosh, I wrote them down. A client of mine did a consult, and she rattled off where all the locations were. Texas, North Carolina, Ohio, Arizona, and Oregon. Okay, that's 5. This is unbelievable. Okay, here's something that you need to keep in mind regarding the news. The news will focus on Ohio, but the national news won't mention the other 4. On the local news in North Carolina, they'll mention theirs. In the local news of Oregon, they'll mention theirs. But the national news won't put it all together, so the people will remain uninformed, Sean. And that's one of the good things about my newsletter. I'm like a little switchboard here. And I was very happy to get my message from Jerry in Northwest Pennsylvania, where he said, Jim, I count the squirrels, and he identified 5 different types of birds. And one of them, he said, is a filate woodpecker. He said, AKA Woody Woodpecker. And he said they did something remarkable. Sean, this is amazing. Nature is wonderful. They hid for 2 days, the squirrels and the birds. All the feeding troughs were untouched for 48 hours. Who notified them?
It's funny you'd say that, because I just saw a before and after picture coming out of some reservoir in California that has refilled itself over the last 6 to 8 months. It was really looking bad, like Lake Mead, and now it's filled again from underground rivers. There's water underground. We don't have to get into this area now, but they like to talk about drought as they try to engineer a famine in this nation and across the world. But there's underground rivers of water that they don't want to talk about. And by the way, as it relates to this coincidence in East Palestine, Ohio, they filmed a movie called White Noise there. It was released by Netflix in September of 2022. It starred Adam Driver, very popular actor. I don't know why the guy would sign the contract. Perhaps he signed other contracts that would make him make a film like this. But then 11 days before the event, 11 days before the event, the CDC updated its profile for vinyl chloride, removing the section on how it affects children, Jim. And I'll quote, what they removed was this: studies in animals suggest that vinyl chloride might affect growth and development. Animal studies also suggest that infants and young children might be more susceptible than adults to vinyl chloride-induced cancer, end quote. They removed that 11 days before this engineered train accident. And I tweeted after this thing that at this point in human history, it's clear that Vanguard, BlackRock, Berkshire Hathaway, and who else? The Windsors?
JP Morgan.
They
JP
own
Morgan
and control everything, Jim, and now they're engineering a collapse globally.
Yeah, I heard JP Morgan was involved in the ownership of the Norfolk Southern Railroad. I don't know to what extent. I didn't get the percentages of capital market cap ownership. Yet, Sean, I am with you completely. This is a scuttle, a sabotage, an extermination. There's another angle to this that needs to be brought up. You know, it's interesting. I focus on finance. I focus on the dollar and gold and monetary policy and oil. Everything is coming together. It's in a scary way, but there is a phenomenon called smart cities. And there is legislation that was passed, I don't know when exactly, I think a year or two ago, I'm not certain of that, but it said that any area that suffered an environmental disaster would have its residents relocated to the nearest smart city. And I believe the smart city is basically a 5G war zone prison colony.
Yep.
That's my impression. I could be wrong.
No, you're not wrong. It's the World Economic Forum United Nations Agenda 2030 model, smart cities, 15-minute cities. It's just like the Hunger Games. And I just want you all to know, I hold in my hands, it came to my home today, the new Solari report from Catherine Austin Fitts. The cover, Gold and Silver, Defending Family Wealth and Sovereignty for 5,000 Years. I want to turn to page 170. Listen to this. Digital concentration camps, the smart grid, and vaccine passports. I quote, worldwide, Mr. Global's efforts to build out the control grid continue at top speed. Satellites, smart grid fiber optics, cables, 5G antennas, and more. At the World Economic Forum's 2022 annual meeting, Nokia's CEO was even emboldened to describe how smartphones, quote, will be built directly into our bodies by 2030. Catherine writes, it is essential that we reject in-home and in-body surveillance devices, including the one-way mirror that is television. That's the new Solari report. Jim, we're over the target. We know who the enemies of humanity are, and instead of backing down and running just for a little bit of cover, only to reemerge later under silence in the cloak of darkness, they are going all in. All of this stuff that we see, all of it's engineered. We know all of it, and they don't care because who's to stop them?
I have a number of comments here, Sean, and it's not quite as bleak and negative. I try to be balanced. I realize that the upper levels of control rooms are all under the powers of World Economic Forum, of the Rothschild central banks, of many different groups, the Langley Narco Group, the Gates Foundation. Okay, I do believe that the powers, the elite powers and globalists are losing their grip. And that is why they're trying to unleash an avalanche of multifaceted disasters, multifaceted initiatives. I don't believe the United Nations will be around much longer. I don't believe the Davos World Economic Forum will be around much longer. I don't believe their puppet leaders in Western Europe and Canada will be around much longer. And I've been saying this, Sean, for the last 6 and 8 months. Ukraine is their last stand. When it falls, their entire network of upper level command is dismantled, destroyed, and wrecked. Now, notice something that happened. It was about last April or May. The Russians overran in Ukraine the money centers for money laundering, the banking centers. They weren't retail. You don't have, John Q public in Kiev going and making $1,000 CD. Now, these are money laundering banks. They move money, and I estimate it's somewhere between $30 and $50 billion a month through Ukraine. As soon as the Russians shut that down, the Biden show began aid to Ukraine. Now, you call that to the Ukrainian leaders, and I don't believe that. I really don't. I believe it's diverted to the Davos Swiss bank accounts. I believe that a very small portion goes to the war effort. I believe a large portion of that aid in the form of arms ends up in the Eastern European black market for weapons. And the center of that is Albania. And ironically, a number of the weapons are bought by the Russian military so they could do reverse engineering. Very little goes to the Ukraine military effort. That is done by NATO, and they're getting depleted, and that's why things are coming to a halt in Ukraine. When Ukraine folds and falls, you're going to see a lot of different things getting cut off. Like, I'll just give you a couple of examples. The president of, the president of France, Macron, I think he either step down or go missing. Trudeau in Canada, he'll either step down or go missing when Ukraine falls. And we're just a month or 2 or 3 away from that. I declared back in, I guess, about August or so that Ukraine war has been won. I wasn't wrong. It's just not over, because this is a depletion war. And I featured that in my December report. I cited 30 different depletion concepts regarding the war. It's the NATO arsenal. Regarding that war, it's a Ukrainian military hardware and arsenal. They're not depleting Russia. Russia's got 8 to 9 times fewer casualties, and they're going to take over pretty much the entire east with the Donbass, the entire south with Odessa and Crimea. This is a tragic war, but the depletion is also of the Ukrainian men. They're dragging 40-year-old men, 38-year-old men, and putting a uniform on them, giving them a rifle, and they're killed in less than 1 week. Okay, this is not a war to win. This is a war to deplete. And they're depleting NATO. I mentioned Davos. I mentioned the Rothschild. The Rothschild central banks are all insolvent and bankrupt right now. They're going to be handed back to the resident governments. But what's happening with NATO is it's getting depleted, and it is going to dissolve. I keep repeating this one comment. It was by Chancellor Scholz, that's their president of Germany, and he was at Bali for the December G8 meeting, and Scholz grabbed the arm of Lavrov, the foreign minister of Russia, and said, "We urgently need a new security architecture for Europe." It was his way of saying NATO is dead. It's his way of saying we want Russian protection for a trade deal that is an umbrella for all of Western Europe and is new, and the Americans are not in the room.
Let me ask you something about that. So NATO is dead. That's actually a real possibility if the people in control of these other countries had backbone and weren't beholden to the World Economic Forum, people like Angela Merkel, Macron, the Rothschild banker in France, and of course Trudeau Castro in Canada. But look, if the deep state government that is in control of our nation can utilize false flags to try to implement United Nations Agenda 2030 policies, false flags is the one we saw in East Palestine, Ohio, if they can blow up the Nord Stream pipeline and be exposed by Seymour Hersh, thereby hurting, really devastating the economy and the peoples of Germany. That was their pipeline, and they're a NATO member. The point I'm trying to make is that if this deep state apparatus can turn itself around on we the people, it can certainly, and it is turning itself around on our own supposed allies. Therefore, what value does NATO have at this point for any right-thinking people or country? None.
None. And I really believe that the German people now are gaining a lot of momentum in recognizing the fact that NATO is not their protector, they're an aggravator, and that the United States and oh gosh, the U.S. UK Union, Langley and MI6, that intelligence hierarchy, they are not the friends of Germans. I have a couple of key German clients, and they keep in touch with me, and they're telling me the German people are waking up, Jim. Slowly, they're accepting the fact that the United States blew up their Nord Stream. There's still some resistance to that notion, but they're beginning to accept it, and it's only going to get more powerful. Sean, the NATO military aspect is going to be dismantled and just fracture away. And these leaders like Macron and Trudeau, those are the main ones. But look what happened in Italy. Giorgina Meloni, she was behind a movement that booted out Draghi as prime minister of Italy. That was back in August and September. My gosh, it's already begun in Western Europe. Now it has to spread. Italy has now regained a good portion of their natural gas pipeline supply from Russia. I have been told, and I can't verify this, I've just been told that the Germans and the Russians have a secret commercial deal, and they're going to bring on back the gas supply. And they cannot talk about it as long as the Americans are in the room. So the objective is to get the Americans out of the room, to get the NATO out of the room, to get the Davos out of the room. And it's a slow, grudging process, but it's going to happen. To me, it's written. Now it just has to play out. I know there's a lot of concern over environmental damage and crises that bring about the United Nations, but I don't think the United Nations is going to be around much longer. I really don't.
Let me back you up with something very interesting. I played this clip the other day, and the man's name escapes me. Somebody was kind enough to email and tell me what his name was. I read it the other night, and now I've forgotten again. I think it's Mario Bossi or something like that, but he's from Australia. He says something very, very interesting. You've seen this outspoken politician before, I'm sure, Jim. Let me just play the first bit of what he says, because I think it's quite powerful, and it might, in fact, back up some of what you're saying regarding the Rothschild banking system and the KHAZARIan Mafia.
You're here leading a march. You've left the Russian consulate. Tell us, why are you leading this march? What are you here for?
Well, a few reasons. The Russians are fighting the KHAZARIan Mafia in their homeland. They're cutting the head off the snake of the group that has been destroying this planet for generations.
What does that have to do with Australia today, here and now?
Because they control this country like they control everywhere else, and the Russians, along with many other nations and many other militaries, are actually fighting a subterranean war to exterminate vermin from the planet.
All right, I'll pause it there.
Yes.
We've talked about this in the past, in the subterranean war idea. We see these quote unquote earthquakes take place unexpectedly, maybe on the East Coast. I'm going back a few years. Seismically speaking, people say those must be underground explosions. I've heard talk about this. I've heard about the child sex dungeons and trafficking taking place. I've heard about what goes on under the Getty Museum. This man has the credibility, though, not only to say it, but to make me believe it when he says it, because I know enough to know that the deep state is real, pedogate, Pizzagate, it's real, child sex trafficking is real, satanic ritual abuse is real, drinking the adrenochrome, harvesting and drinking adrenochrome is real. What is really going on here? And pray God it be true that the KHAZARIan Mafia is on its last legs, as war that they're waging against us is being turned around on them.
I haven't seen that fellow in over a month. And if you could send me that article and video, I would really appreciate it. I digested that right after Christmas, and it seemed like the story went away. But let me give you a reference to what I believe that war is all about. The nexus of the underground traffic ways, traffic lanes, are focused in Ukraine. I've been saying this for close to a year. Ukraine is the last stand. When it falls, everything else is going to break. It's like putting a knife or a stake through the heart of the monster, of the vampire. All the limbs, all the arms, all the legs stop moving. Ukraine is the heart of the vampire. Now, this fellow is talking about a war going on, and the Russians, I believe, are at the center of this in a visible manner. That is because the good element, the best part of the American and British militaries cannot show their faces. They cannot, because you got the London Center, the sovereign city. You got Washington, D.C., the sovereign city. You got the Biden show, regardless of their television sets in Atlanta and Carson City, California, whatever. What you see on the news, what you see above ground is the Biden show with NATO fighting the Russians. What you don't see is what I believe is a higher level military, Sean, and it's something that is extremely difficult to get much information on. I do the best. I don't get very far, but I get bits and pieces. It's the Space Force. And the Trump element of the U.S. military is part of the Space Force. And so are the Russians. What you have now, right now, here and now, is that the Trump element of the military, U.S. military, is fighting hand in hand with the Russians, supplying satellite information, GPS information, Starlink sharing, logistics, and a lot of the battles are going on underground. There's a battle going on at the Maine and Vermont border with Canada. There's a battle going on underground. I don't want to get into too deeply with that whole issue because it's just loaded with information, loaded with controversy. The Russians are the visible side to the Space Force trying to exterminate the Khazarians. There's a lot of talk about German tanks, the Leopard tanks. A lot of confusion with that too. There's talk that the Germans don't want to send the Leopard tanks into Ukraine because they know that they will be destroyed in under 2 weeks. So what the hell is going on with German tanks? There are some reports that Germany is beginning to work with Russia at a military capacity to drive out the Khazarians. And I told you, the best element of the NATO, Western Europe, and American and British military cannot show themselves. They're working in secrecy. I don't know exactly what's going to happen in Ukraine, except that it's going to fall. It's going to be over with. I have been saying for 3 months, the cabal is going to murder Zelensky because it will be convenient to do so. I've gotten some hints that it's already happened. Now, if they kill Zelensky, he won't threaten the cabal. He won't threaten Biden. He won't threaten to unleash, say, a nuclear device in Turkey or, Italy or some other place.
Or can I just jump in? The
Sure.
behavior of this administration and the puppet in chief, Joe Biden, regarding Ukraine makes me believe that what they're being threatened by may likely be videos of them engaging in the most abominable behaviors with children. Because look, he's definitely threatening them with something. There's no reason to give $110 billion to Ukraine and then fly over there on President's Day, worst optics ever, and pledge another, $500 million to this loon?
It's going to Davos. It's
Yeah.
going to the Davos Uberlords, the majority. It's going to the black market and being sold by Ukrainian military generals for personal private profit. It is not going to the battlefield. There's very little Ukrainian hardware on the battlefield anymore.
Let me tell you something, though. I want to just interrupt one more second here because I know you're going to have thoughts on this. Epstein child trafficking victim Sarah Ransom claims to have made copies of videos of high-ranking politicians raping children and worse. Ransom claims the people include Barack, and Michelle, some might say Michael, Obama. She wrote about this in a book called Silenced No More. So my point about Biden, believe me, if Obama and Michelle Obama are engaging in this behavior along with Hillary Clinton, you can be sure that bumbling puppet Biden is as well. We know his son behaves like this. That's right.
Yes, yes. Well, no doubt, no doubt. There are many, many sides to this. And I believe that Zelensky is going to be murdered, if not already. I believe Macron is going to be murdered or deposed or go missing. I think that it's very possible Trudeau is already dead. We are going through one of the biggest psycho series that I've ever witnessed in my life of people pretending to be others. You've got black hat officials removed and replaced by black hat. Look no further than the governor of California, Newsom. You've got the governor of Michigan temporarily last September and October. She used a double. I've got the pictures. I got a Michigan client. You've got Fauci, and I think he's long gone. And others have identified a double with a different profile, size of the skull. You got so many different deceptions going on. Oprah Winfrey. Look at Madonna. They're on version number 3. She looks like she's 35 years old.
No, she does not. She looks like a horror show actress. She looks like, I don't know what she did to her face, but God bless America. Stay away from the plastic surgery, Madonna.
I saw on the music channel a Latin version of MTV, and it was Madonna, and she couldn't sing worth a damn.
No, she can't sing. She was never a very good singer. I'm going to let you finish that thought, but we only have 25 minutes left, so I want to just read something you wrote, but then finish that thought, please. But then I want to turn to this. Simultaneous breakdown of big banks, UST bonds, and Forex currency system. There is a collapse happening, and it is being camouflaged by, well, Bitcoin is up 50% this year. Okay, it's being camouflaged by a NASDAQ that's not doing that badly. The Dow's not crashing through the floor at this point. So I want to talk about that, but first I want to share a personal anecdote. Do you want to hear my anecdote first, or do you want to finish your thought?
No, you go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay, the anecdote is this. There is an empty store space in our little town in which we live. It's been empty now for at least 5 years. It was a Burger King. When you think of Burger King, you don't think of nutritious quality food, but you might think of food per se, right, Jim? Well, guess what? It sat empty for 5 years, and it's now being refurbished, and I just figured out what it is. Are you ready for this? No food for you, Surf, not even toxic Burger King food. You get a Chase Bank. That's what's going into the 5-year-old shuttered Burger King. My point is they're destroying our food supply, our infrastructure, the quality of our food, water, air, and who's behind it all? Rockefeller, Chase Bank, JP Morgan, Rothschild.
BlackRock and Vanguard.
Yep.
Which are their tools. Yep, I get it. I didn't really have much more to say about Madonna. I have a collection, Sean. It's about 20 people. I saw Bill Gates at the Australian Tennis Open in January. And I got to say, it really did look like him. I saw him smile. Now, I know as ugly and nefarious as that son of a bitch, some of the devil is, in the last 2 years, we've seen 2 other doubles that have different mouths. One of them had a curved mouth, and one of them had a pucker mouth. I call it the asshole mouth.
Well, and people always point to Biden's earlobes as being inconsistent. When people talk about clones, quote unquote clones, I always bump on that, especially as it relates to people who just may have recently died. Now suddenly there's a Damar Hamlin clone. What I would prefer to point out to people is that the CIA has engineered masks that are unbelievable. And one of these CIA agents sat down with a sitting president. It might have been Bush Sr., I don't recall. And the man didn't realize that he was sitting there with a CIA agent who he knew. The person had a mask on. The point is these masks are now so convincing that they can roll out a CIA agent into a room of people. The CIA agent pretends to be someone else. What's to stop them from impersonating Biden, Clinton, or Damar Hamlin with these masks?
Nothing. The cost is around $40,000 to $60,000 per mask. I've got a military contact who is aware of that cost. They can be produced. It's like, I think, part of 3D printing. It's very exotic, very advanced. It involves paint. They're not useful for 6 months. They're useful for a few months, and then they got to do it again. You've seen pictures of Kamala Harris.
Yep.
And the neckline for the mask.
Same with
You've seen
Biden.
the same for Joe Biden. I recently saw a picture of Joe Biden, and it was from a few years ago where he had a tattoo. I don't know whether it was a military tattoo or something, you know. And when he got his shot for that PR exhibit a year or so ago, he did not have that tattoo on the same arm. So it's not the same guy. I've got a collection. It's got Pompeo. It's got Newsom. It's got Whitmer. It's got, oh gosh. You know, when they had the Top Gun new movie, they had the audacity to have a lookalike for Tom Cruise give an introduction speech. And then in the early scenes, you saw Tom Cruise. So the immediate impression was, well, that's not Tom Cruise. But then I saw a video of Tom Cruise in Tokyo for the inauguration of that same movie, and it did look like Tom Cruise. They're using doubles to be in more than one continent at the same time. That is my conclusion. We're going through a tremendous deception. There's nothing to stop them from coming out with a fake Obama or a fake Kamala Harris or a fake Joe Biden. But what's going to stop all this, Sean, is the fall of Ukraine. It's going to be the halting of money laundering. It's going to be other laws that obstruct gigantic warehouses full of multiple billions of $100 bills shrink wrapped. There's going to be an end to this, and it's probably going to be financial. Yeah, you could always say, well, the people are going to turn against, but the people are very slow. I have lost a tremendous amount of respect. I shouldn't say that. I've lost a good deal of respect for the human species in the last 2 years. I thought they were going to recognize gene therapy as destructive for the vaccine with the double X, but they didn't. I have a friend in the suburbs here. He stopped counting, Sean, for 3 degrees of separation, friend to friend to friend. He stopped counting at 260 dead people.
I know.
He said, now I'm only counting 1 degree of separation. People I know or people my wife knows.
Get this.
And he's up to about 25.
Sorry, my wife works with a young gal, right? I should say the young gal works for my wife, and her mother lives in a different country. Her mother's 54 years old. Her mother was healthy. Her mother was going to go to a church event 2 Sunday nights ago. She called her friend and said she wasn't feeling well, so she was going to skip it, and they found her dead the next day face down in her bed. She died suddenly. No pre-cause reason for it. No pre-death reason for her to die suddenly. And people have a hard time stringing this stuff together as 20-year-old football players are dropping dead, as just happened the other day. Jim, this is a war against humanity, and maybe it's a war we can win, because these people, they succeed when they can hide in the darkness. And I think that's what the apocalypse is, right? It's the unveiling. So that's why we stand a chance. You can comment on that, but can I ask you one other thing as it pertains to beating these people? I asked you about the Forex, UST bonds, the breakdown of the big banks, and you wrote to me that, as irony would have it, Japan and Germany are escaping the Rothschild and Rockefeller fascist clutches by selling UST bonds and buying gold in reserve. How do we round out this conversation with good news for those of us who hold silver and it's still kneecapped at $21 an ounce, or gold at $1,900 an ounce? Where is this system headed? Because either they win or we win. I know I'm all over the map, but we only have 20 minutes.
We're going to win, but it's going to be a Pyrrhic victory. We might lose anywhere between 15 and 50 million Americans. That's sad. That's tragic. And it could be a lot higher if these chemical spills continue and are more effective. we've got simultaneous breakdown of banks, bonds, and the dollar. And a leverage sledgehammer is the derivatives. Interest rate swap derivative. In Europe, it's called the euro dollar derivative. Call ours the bond derivative, and there's the euro dollar derivative. We're going to win, but we have to protect our money, because the cabal is going to do their dead level best to try to destroy a good deal of our assets. We need to hunker down in silver, but also gold. I prefer silver because silver is going to be liquidated within the petrodollar derivative contracts, and it must revert to 30-to-1 ratio with gold. The entire petrodollar has crude oil, the dollar, and precious metals, three sides of the same table. And the precious metals have 30-to-1 ratio. Silver is going to be a big beneficiary, and at the same time, they're probably going to blame it on the new technology with the silver requirements. They've got a story ready for everything. The derivatives are breaking things, and I got to make a very quick summary comment about interest rates. They're raising interest rates not to slow down price inflation. That's just silly. And that is the opinion of Martin Armstrong, and he's got that dead wrong. They're not raising interest rates to quell price inflation. They're reducing the money supply. It's down 1.5% on M2 in the last 12 months. They're reducing and constricting the money supply. They're raising interest rates to make sure that foreign investors still are willing to buy our bonds, our securitized debt. We have U.S. government deficits, we securitize it, we issue bonds, we sell them. We do not want foreigners to say, we're not buying any, we're on strike, we're not buying your debt. But they're not buying very much. They need to keep on raising interest rates, even though on the other side of this two-sided sword, double-edged sword, the other side is countries like Korea that have a nice big fat Forex reserves in treasury bonds. They're losing value. They've lost about, somewhere between 10 and 20%, depending on the bond maturity. So we're harming the foreign allies who own treasury bonds while we're encouraging new buyers of new bonds. That is a game we cannot win, because we're raising the interest rates while our debt has gone over 32 trillion and foreigners notice, so they don't want to buy our new treasury bonds even at a higher rate. Well, they might buy it for a three-month or 6 month, but Sean, this is going to blow up, and the blow up will happen with derivatives, and it's already happening.
All I was going to say when I jumped in there was, this is not sustainable in any way, shape, or form when the interest payments on the national debt are now approaching $1 trillion a year. So how does this house of cards come down? They're propping it up.
It's going to go up. It's going to go up another 2% in the next 3 years. I just wrote that into my report. I'm working on the report right now, putting a lot of different touches on it, working every day on it. This is not a winnable game. This is not a sustainable wagon. Okay, we're harming savers in foreign central banks for their Forex reserves. The treasury bond is the predominant item in their Forex reserves. We're harming them. So they're dumping them. And Japan is at the lead of dumping them. And they've caused a problem with their own Japanese government debt. They're dumping the treasury bonds and buying gold and defending themselves from Rothschild and Rockefeller assassinations of lower level officials to try to stop it. And they're not going to be able to stop the Japanese. Eventually, you're going to see Japan, Korea, and China, the big three. They're going to join forces, maybe even Taiwan. I don't want to get into Taiwan discussion, but the big three of Japan, Korea, and China are going to form a trade union, and they're going to form their own payment system. It's not going to be dollar. The leverage sledgehammer is going to be the derivatives. And I had a very interesting consult call It was several months ago. It was about June or May, and it was a former FDIC official, liquidation officer, and he told me, you got it right, Jim, Bank of America is in bankruptcy, but so are 2 or 3 others, including Chase, including Wells Fargo. And I said, well, what's going on with that? And he said, $1 to $2 billion a night at 2 a.m., and it's kind of a round robin. This bank today, and 10 days later, the same bank, different bank tomorrow, 10 days later, that same bank. They're all insolvent. None of them passed Basel IV rules. So we're going to see a tremendous event, and it's going to happen in European banks, Sean, because that is the primary center for lost money laundering from trafficking of all kinds. Ukraine is going to fall. It's going to take down the European banks. There's going to be a tremendous amount of capital that goes to the U.S. banks. It's going to buy us another 6 to 10 months. It'll give idiots like my brother an opportunity to get their money out of Bank of America and Citibank and Chase. They're not going to have too many more opportunities. There's a war going on between the banks. We got Wall Street and the Fed. They are opposed by the Swiss and the major European banks. And BlackRock is on the side of the Europeans. We've got a war you could summarize in the United States, a war between the Fed and BlackRock. BlackRock declared bankruptcy, but they're still operating.
You know
my gosh.
You know who tends to agree with you, I think, is Tom Luongo. You know, he's made the same point that at this point it's Jerome Powell fighting the Davos establishment by not going to zero and then negative interest rates. We don't have to have that debate today, but I think it's interesting that maybe you might support that thesis. Hey, go ahead.
I not only support the thesis, but I got that point from Longo.
Okay.
Okay.
Fair enough. All right. So regarding the Clinton body count and people that are beholden to this system, right? I like to say that the Bushes made the Clintons, because when Uncle Bill there was the governor of Arkansas, the CIA was running drugs out of Mena, Arkansas, and that is when the Clinton body count began. Now, it probably began before that, for all I know. These people are so beholden to evil, but I like to say that the Bushes, Bush Sr., former head of the CIA, the Bushes and the CIA made Bill Clinton the made man that he is. What does that mean? He's part of the mafia. What does that mean? Well, generally, to be a made man, you have to kill somebody, and everybody in your little club there, the mafia, knows you killed that guy, you whack somebody, now you're a made man because they got something on you. Boy, do they have something on the Clintons. You remember the Clinton body count, Jim?
It was 160 about 2 or 3 years ago.
And rising. Arkansas police rule suicide and death of Clinton aide found hanging from a tree with a shotgun blast to his chest. Despite no sign of a gun, they ruled suicide. Should we read a little bit about this? Can you imagine being Bill or Hillary Clinton? Can you imagine what's coming for you in the afterlife? Maybe they don't believe in the afterlife, or maybe they think they just get to hang out and party with Satan in hell. I'm not sure what their world beliefs are. According to Bill Clinton, I had a soundbite once from him where he said that his wife is actually a practicing witch. I don't not believe that. I tend to think it is true, but the investigation into the so-called suicide was reopened after Middleton was found dead on a 1,100-acre Perryville farm linked to Bill Clinton with a shotgun blow to his chest, and he was hanging from a tree. Suicide.
We're doing our part, Sean, and you're doing a tremendous job. I've seen some of your at least the titles of recent interviews. You're getting a really good list. I'm flattered to be part of it. I like to point out that Hillary Clinton is a Rockefeller. Bill Clinton is a Rockefeller. I believe his father is Winthrop. The timing is perfect. Winthrop was a governor in Arkansas in the 70s. Okay. They did not have a child together named Chelsea. Chelsea's father is Webster Hubble. If you need proof, just take a look at their gigantic mouths.
And by the way, Chelsea married a Rothschild.
Yeah, and you know, I don't know what's going to happen with them, or whether something has already happened to them. I don't want to get into a discussion of Guantanamo and all that. There are a lot of events that are on the table, in dispute, in need of confirmation. And I give them like 80, 85% credibility, and never 100, never 100. Okay, we are in a battle for the planet. We are going to see a battle to make us poor. And if we don't listen to the cabal corporate media, we can go ahead and buy silver, and we will be in really good shape for the silver that we own. If you want to be blockheaded and just foolish and follow the advice like, oh, everything's going to turn out just fine. We've been through problems before. I love this argument. We've been through problems before. We always come out smelling like a rose. We're the leading nation. We're always going to be the leading nation. Not going to happen that way. If you do that, you're going to leave your money in the big banks and you're going to suffer some losses. But I believe the bail-in, the bail-ins will be later. I don't think they're going to be immediate. I think the white hats who have the Fed under control, I believe they are going to make an escape route for a long, long channel, a long period of time for you to get your money out of JP Morgan, Citibank, Bank of America, Wells Fargo. You're going to have the opportunity, but don't waste time. Don't take the chance. Get out, buy silver. Get a consult call with me. I'll help you through it. I'll help you. What I tend to do, Sean, is I get a lot of consult calls. I've done 430 now in the last 3 years. I keep track. I got notes, each person. What I tend to do is I remove the doubts. Jim, I need to be convinced. Here's where I'm leaning. Help me the rest of the way, because I want to buy silver. I want to buy gold. I want to buy, this property in another country that's loaded with copper. But I just can't pull the switch. I need to be convinced. Help me. And that's what I do. And I steer them into smaller banks. And my gosh, I've had quite a few clients contact me later and say, Jim, I feel so much better. I got my money out of Chase. By the way, I have one bank that stands out above all the rest. They have blocked at least 20 different subscription orders with their bank credit card. And this has been going on ever since about 2010 or 11 or 12. And that bank is Chase.
Yep.
JP Morgan Chase.
Yep. They continue to debank people in the truth space. They continue to debank people in the truth space.
Yeah. Well, I had a joke with a lady. It was about 8 months ago. She said, Jim, I don't know what's going on. I live in Brooklyn. I've got a good bank. I got a good card. Everything works fine. I can't get the order filled. I said, try a different bank card. My guess is you're using Chase. And she said, how did you know?
Hey, by the way, I want to back you up on one
me.
thing. I want to back you up on one thing. I don't think going all in on silver or gold or Bitcoin or anything, you can't go all in on any one thing, but you got to diversify at this point. You got to understand where your money is and who you bank with, because the FDIC had a conference a few weeks ago, Jim, in which they talked about bail-ins. They said bail-ins are going to happen. We don't necessarily want the public to know. We don't want to spark a bank run or panic. And they said the announcement would probably come on a Friday afternoon.
But that's 5 or 6 months ago. What are they doing?
Well, I don't know. I don't know what they're doing. But my point is that people have to prepare. And I think having some physical silver and physical gold is one way to prepare. So if people want to talk with you, let's show the website, Jim. We got to wrap this up here, and you can say your goodbyes. But let me show the website. It's golden-jackass.com.
Sponsor if you want to pitch in a big way. Consulting if